Hello again, everybody, and welcome to the Saints Insider Podcast. I'm Zach Ewing with Matthew Paris and Jeff Duncan. We expect Luke Johnson to jump in shortly here, too. We had to kind of all get home and get our days back together after recording our podcast earlier today, which you can find on the YouTube channel. And now, literally, like as I set that thing to play, like 12 minutes before that is when the news broke. Adam Schefter of ESPN.com first, and then Luke was able to confirm it. The Saints are expected to hire Klint Kubiak of the San Francisco 49ers as their new offensive coordinator. Kubiak is the San Francisco 49ers passing game coordinator. And obviously, because he works for a team that's playing in the Super Bowl, nothing is going to be officially announced until after the Super Bowl. So we don't even expect anything in the next week. It'll be like a little Lundi Gras or Mardi Gras celebration for New Orleans to welcome in Klint Kubiak the following week. And so I guess first and foremost, guys, let's just start with that caveat that no, this is not official. The Saints have not released anything. They will not release anything. Klint Kubiak probably will be saying no comment if he is behind any podiums in Las Vegas this week. But this is who we expect the Saints to end up with.
Yeah, I think it represents a departure from what the Saints have done almost for the last 20 years. You know, Klint Kubiak runs a different style of offense than Sean Payton and what Pete Carmichael did. And it's a very interesting hire, I think, because it also kind of dispels the, no one wanted this job. They weren't going to land anyone appealing. But frankly, I think Klint Kubiak is a more than qualified choice. He, had a year of being a coordinator with the Vikings, the Denver Broncos, after they fired Nathaniel Hackett last year. They turned to Kubiak late in the year to be their play caller. So he has experience. And he studied he's been working with Kyle Shanahan this past year. So I think it's a really interesting hire, and we'll see how much you can get out of Derek Carr and the Saints offense.
Yeah, Klint Kubiak is the son of Gary Kubiak, who obviously former NFL head coach, longtime offensive coordinator, guru. I don't think it's going to be a dramatic departure, though, from what the Saints have been doing offensively. When you look at, this is basically Kubiak is from that Mike Shanahan kind of offensive system. It's not a lot different than the kind of Gruden, Sean Payton system. I think the biggest change is going to be the running game. And I know he's been the passing coordinator in San Francisco, but I think incorporating the 49ers rushing attack is going to be, I think, the biggest difference that fans notice. But otherwise, I don't think it'll be a huge transition for Derek Carr, particularly, because I do think there's a lot of the same concepts. They just get to them a little bit different way.
Yeah. Welcome in, Luke Johnson. As I said, we're all kind of scrambling after we already recorded one podcast today. And yeah, of course, these things can drop at any time. But Luke, we were just saying nothing is official yet, but certainly Klint Kubiak appears to be the Saints man.
Yep, that's everything we're hearing. Is it that they they zeroed in on him and they are expected to hire him after the Super Bowl. So, I think this is what a lot of people kind of figured. And, we were talking about it on the pod earlier today. I think that this was kind of the vibe that we were feeling. And it was funny. It's like we got word about that this was kind of happening right after we got off the pod. So, I just think that it makes all the sense in the world. I've said it on the podcast over and over and over again, but the San Francisco offensive scheme, if this is indeed what he's bringing over with him, or at least elements of it, I think is proven and successful, and it gets the most out of quarterbacks. Jimmy Garoppolo had great success there. Brock Purdy went from being the Mr. Irrelevant last pick in the draft to being an MVP front runner this year. So if they can even get 80% of that, 85% of that, I think it's a big improvement over where they were.
We will kind of dig into that offensive philosophy and obviously have a lot more discussion about this in the weeks to come, especially once we get to talk to Klint Kubiak. Quick check of his background here at Saints Insider Podcast reaction episode. Subscribe to the channel, hit the like button for us, and tune in and get notifications whenever we do have these shows. Klint Kubiak went to Colorado State. He actually played safety there, but he's obviously son of Gary Kubiak, who has an offensive background. That's always been what he has as a coach. He started at Texas A&M, offensive quality control coach. Same job at with the Minnesota Vikings under his father. He was wide receivers coach at Kansas for a year. He decided a year in Lawrence was more than enough, as most people do. Denver Broncos offensive. Yeah, well, had to throw in that shot. Back to Minnesota, where he was the quarterbacks coach in 2019 and 2020. He took over for his father as offensive coordinator and called plays down the stretch for the Vikings in 2021. And then same thing in 2022, where he was the passing game coordinator for the Broncos and took over play calling for Nathaniel Hackett late in the year last year with the Broncos struggling. And then obviously this year with the 49ers. So kind of a varied background. He's one of the Saints few candidates who has called plays before, as you guys mentioned. And so kind of a lot to like a young guy, only 36 years old, but still comes with some experience and obviously a pedigree, Matt.
Yeah, and I think some of the things you'll see, even if they're similar concepts, I think you're about to see a little bit more innovative or modern offense than kind of what's been here. I was looking at pre-snap motion. Kyle Shanahan loves that. They ran it 75% of the time in San Francisco this season. The Saints, I think, ran around 33%. So it's a big difference there. It's funny. Even though the system is known for its play action, that's not something that San Francisco uses quite a bit. I think they rank in the 20s, looking at it briefly. But Kubiak's year in Minnesota, when he was the play caller, they ranked around league average. And, league average may not sound great, but the Saints were kind of at the bottom of the barrel of that until they started doing it more later in the year to great success. So, I think this thing we talked on the first pod about the Saints' commitment to Derek Carr. What does them restructuring mean? And kind of if they're going to be with him for at least the next 2 seasons, it's really about maximizing the remainder of his prime or post-prime. And I think this hire helps do that.
Yeah, look, I think it's going to be interesting to see, when we finally get a chance to talk to Klint Kubiak, what his offensive philosophy is going to be, because I think, we all see him coming from San Francisco, obviously Kyle Shanahan, but I think probably his biggest influence is his father. Yeah. So it'll be interesting to see if he incorporates pieces of both influences there or what he's going to do when he actually is the man here in New Orleans. Because I don't think it's, it's cut and dried is going to be exactly what the 49ers are running. But we'll find out. Maybe it's something the Saints wanted and insisted on. And so I think that'll all come out in the wash when we get a chance to talk to Klint.
Yeah.
I think the fact that they had 2 guys from the 49ers staff on this list of candidates told me that they like the offense that they were running. So like I do think that they're going to tailor this scheme toward what Kubiak wants to do and what the personnel on the team already does well. But I think we're going to see a lot of elements of what San Francisco ran, because this is why you go after a coach like him, or him or Brian Greasy. I think you see what the 49ers are doing, and you're like, I want to do some of that. It's not going to be a mirror image of it. It wasn't in Houston with Bobby Slowick this year, but there are a lot of elements that are very similar, and I think you're going to see this offense look a lot different than it did next year.
Matt, you were saying?
Oh, that was exactly my point, is that they, I think they interviewed 11 candidates that, well, at least we have public knowledge of, and half of them, more than half, came from that Shanahan-McVay tree. But before the Shanahan-McVay tree, it was the Shanahan-Kubiak tree. So
that's my point, yeah.
Yeah, so even like as modern as Kyle Shanahan and Sean McVay seem, this is an offense that goes back years, and that has been kind of updated along the way.
Yeah, look, Kubiak is very similar. They're all similar. Yeah. Mike Shanahan, Kubiak, all those trees there's not a huge difference. I just think, Gary Kubiak was a guy that Klint spent way more time with than he did Kyle Shanahan. So we'll see. I guess we'll find out.
Right. And if you remember, I mean, tying it all back, like Gary Kubiak had Kyle Shanahan as an offensive coordinator when he was the head coach of the Texans. So I mean, it's all tied together.
And Kyle Shanahan started and Sean McVay under John Gruden. You know,
Right.
so it's all kind of tied together.
Right.
Yeah, I think there's sort of an impulse to sort of say, well, there's this coaching tree and that coaching tree, and this is, a distinct offense from that. And the truth of the matter is that if you've been successful in the NFL, you've probably worked with other successful coaches in the NFL, and at some point, it all kind of melts together. I don't know that we've had a true renaissance of offense in the NFL since maybe the West Coast offense, and then you just sort of build on that. And Mike Shanahan changes it a little bit, and now Kyle Shanahan has changed it. Sean McVay changed it. Gary Kubiak changed it. Now we'll see what spin Klint puts on it. One thing that does certainly stick out, and obviously Saints fans now have something to kind of keep an eye on at the Super Bowl. Maybe they didn't before. Is how does he use his weapons and plays and things like that. And one stat that's floating around a lot in the last couple of hours since this news was leaked is that the 49ers were number 2 in the NFL this year in pre-snap motion. The Saints, I believe, were number 26. So that's about as big of a change as you could get. That's just one thing, and pre-snap motion can lead to a lot of things. It can mean a lot of stuff. It can mean nothing. It can be a decoy. But that is something I think we should expect to see a little bit more of just based on those numbers.
Yeah, for me, it's about tendencies. It's what are they calling? When are they calling it? How often are they going to a certain type of thing? Because, if you look up Justin Jefferson's stats in Minnesota the year Kubiak, I think he got the most of their offense. Now that's Justin Jefferson, and maybe the Saints don't have an exact player like that, but it's all about what can you do with the weapons at your disposal and how do you deploy them. And, if Klint Kubiak really took this year to heart in San Francisco and picked up some new things along the way, then the Saints should benefit.
Yeah, and remember that postseason press conference with Dennis Allen? I mean, one of the things he kept talking about was how much he wanted to improve the running game. So I think that's going to be a big thing. I mean, how are they going to work this running game? I mean, that's what Kyle Shanahan probably more revered for than anything in the league is his ability to run the ball out of that and then use the passing game off the run game. And, how do you incorporate that now into this offense with Doug Marrone, who's basically the run game coordinator? It'll be interesting to see who Klint Kubiak brings in, if he brings in some, colleagues from the 49ers staff, and if they work to kind of incorporate what the Niners do in the run game too. Because I think that's something that's kind of getting overlooked in all this. We always look at the passing games. It's a passing league, but I think Dennis Allen's going to want to run the ball, and I think incorporating that scheme that the 49ers run is going to be huge for them.
Well, and this is another thing that we brought up too, and it's less a schematic thing, but the Saints now have kind of a direction with how they want to approach their personnel. And I think when you look at that San Francisco offense, obviously they're not going to just go out and find a Deebo Samuel and a George Kittle and a Christian McCaffrey, but I think one of the staples of that offense has always been, even before those guys were there, is guys who can move with the football, who are really good at the catch after run after catch stuff. So, I wouldn't be surprised if you see them try to implement some of that in the offense with some of their personnel decisions this offseason, whether it's through the draft or free agency. And I think you saw that in Houston as well with Bobby Slowick this offseason, where all of a sudden Nico Collins makes this huge jump, and yards after catch were a big part of his development, a big part of the reason he had this great season this year. So yeah, I'll be kind of curious to see if how much this affects their personnel and what type of players they want to bring in.
Luke, one thing you mentioned a couple of weeks ago when we were discussing offensive coordinator candidates, and specifically these two from the 49ers staff, is how I don't want to say easy, but how much they can aid a quarterback in simplifying the offense and making reads and sort of find. I mean, it's nothing against Brock Purdy, because Brock Purdy has proven to be more than anyone thought he would be, but he's also never going to be mistaken for a super elite quarterback prospect, right? Like, he was drafted in the 7th round. So now you take that offense and go to a guy like Derek Carr, who's obviously had an up and down career, had an up and down season with the Saints in 2023. A lot of this, I would think, is in hopes that it can really help Derek kind of be more consistent and productive.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, look, for as up and down as he was last year, he showed all the signs that he could be a really good quarterback when things were operating well. And I think if you're cleaning up the picture for him and you're making it easy for him and you're giving him just nothing but like easy decision after easy decision, get the ball out quick, let your guys go make plays, I think it can look really good. You know, if he's not dropping back there and letting the plays develop and taking a long time and kind of making rush decisions at the end of it, I think if you got a play caller in there that's saying like, this is going to be there, trust it, go after it and go get it, I think the results can be good. We've just seen it over and over and over again with these smart offensive play callers that the things they do is they make things easy on the quarterback. And we've seen plenty of quarterbacks who have not had a ton of success or weren't like super highly regarded. And it's not just the Shanahan coaching tree, but it's the McVay coaching tree too, or guys who are considered good have great seasons. I mean, Jared Goff, for one, right? They make things easy for Jared Goff in Detroit, and he had a fantastic season. Shane Waldron did the same thing with Geno Smith. You see it with Kevin O'Connell in Minneapolis with Kirk Cousins. You see it in San Francisco, obviously. I don't think it's any surprise that C.J. Stroud had this great rookie year. C.J. Stroud's a great player, makes great stuff, but they make it easier on him. You didn't have to go in there and carry this gargantuan load. So I do think that if they get this hire right, you can get a lot more out of Derek Carr than you got last year.
Yeah, certainly an exciting sentence for the Saints. And Jeff, just kind of as a final word, or a almost final word, let's say, for now, of the candidates the Saints interviewed, and I think a lot of people were kind of excited about the idea of Zach Robinson. He signed with the Falcons. People were maybe excited about Gerard Johnson from Houston. He decided to stay there. But Klint Kubiak, I mean, I think you have to say, obviously it has to work, and we'll see. But just from a impression of the hire point of view, was pretty high on the list of people that would get Saints fans excited, and I think maybe with good reason.
Yeah, maybe the fans will temper down a little bit now. I think that anxiety was starting to get to everyone because it was taking so long. But I think the Saints probably had Klint Kubiak in mind all along, and because the team was obligated in the playoffs, there really was nothing they could do about it. So maybe Mike Thomas now will understand that they had somebody in mind all along. It wasn't everybody just turning them down because of Derek Carr. But I do think he obviously is a qualified candidate, and he fits kind of the mode of most of what we saw them bringing in were young, rising kind of prospects, right? Ascending type of coaches. I think, Mickey Loomis and Dennis Allen are trying to find like the next Sean Payton, right? The next guy on the way up that they can kind of, hitch their wagon to. And a guy coming from the background he's got under Kyle Shanahan and, with his father and as etched as he is in the history of the league. I think it's definitely, I think fans should be excited about it. And I think Derek Carr ought to be excited. Like Luke said, I think, anybody that's played in this system over the years has improved almost across the board. And he fits a lot of the same concepts and skill sets that they look for in their quarterbacks, a little mobility, accuracy. Doesn't have to have a cannon arm, even though Carr has one. So I think there's a lot of reasons to be excited if you're a Saints fan.
One more note. Oh, go ahead, Matt.
Oh, yeah, just what we talked about kind of earlier this offseason. I'm interested to see how much leeway Klint Kubiak has. Jeff, I know one of the things you kept bringing up was like being the head coach of the offense, like just kind of leave the offense alone and let, the new guy coming in run it. And now is Klint Kubiak going to have that control because he's so young, or how much does Dennis Allen try to put his imprint in? I'm thinking back to that 21 season, and something I remember just from the discourse around the Vikings at the time is I remember fans being very frustrated with Mike Zimmer, the coach there, because they thought he was too kind of involved in the offense, at least first down runs or runs on 2nd and 10 that kind of maybe stalled their offense in a way. Now, I'm not saying that's going to happen here or if that was even the case, but I wonder the type of control and the type of influence Kubiak will have in this offense.
Yeah, good point.
It's a great point. Yeah.
Yeah. Look, I think who he hires is going to be interesting, right?
Yep.
I mean, how he fills out his staff. He's got some key positions. I'm sure he's got people in mind. But this is all going to be, this was the first domino that had to fall. So now I think the Saints can kind of get started with their offseason, fill out the rest of their staff. Like Luke said, now that you have an offense in mind, what scheme you're going to run, really can start dictating how you look at personnel procurement. Jeff Ireland and his staff now can start tailoring, their prospects to what Klint Kubiak wants. And so I think this was a big step for them to kind of move on from 2023 and start 2024.
Yeah, that'll be part of the next step, and we'll see Ronald Curry on staff as the quarterbacks coach, Doug Marrone on staff as offensive line coach. Are those two retained? And then the Saints need coaches for running backs and wide receivers. One note, and I'll let anybody jump in with final thoughts after this, but one note is that Klint Kubiak's younger brother, Clay, and yes, also spelled with a K, is the 49ers assistant quarterbacks coach. So I don't know if that'd be a candidate to bring with him or if Clay Kubiak would be in line for a promotion in San Francisco, but that's certainly one name to keep an eye on too. All right. And I guess if that's it from us today, that's our second podcast of the day. So we're out of talking points, and we will be back next week. Have a podcast on Wednesday. We'll talk more about this hire, about what it means for the Saints, and what they do next in the offseason going forward. So subscribe to the Saints on NOLA.com YouTube channel. In the meantime, hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and also leave a comment for us. Let us know what you think of the Saints' new offensive line or offensive coordinator hire, Klint Kubiak. For Matthew Paris, Jeff Duncan, and Luke Johnson, I'm Zach Ewing, and we will see you Wednesday on the next Saints Insider Podcast.